Welcome to What CEOs Talk About. Do you wonder what CEOs talk about behind closed doors? How they bring their vision to reality? How do they overcome and succeed through adversity? We share that and so much more with each episode. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, this is Martin Hunter, your host of the What CEOs Talk About show, where we talk about translating strategy into frontline operations. Past guests include Mark Raffin, Jeff Livingston, Steve Daniels, Ryan McKenzie. True Earth, for those who don't know who Ryan McKenzie is, he's the Chief Marketing Officer for those little tabs, those little dish. Oh, he's going to kill me. those detergent tabs that stop the consumption of plastic. It's pretty cool. So check it out. This episode is brought to you by Urgio. Urgio is Latin for to urge, a strong desire to drive change, stimulate thought, insight, feeling, encourage action. Urgio provides fractional COO services to move you through growing pains so that your company can flourish and profit. Keith, you work with a lot of CEOs. How important is it for a visionary CEO to have somebody who can translate their strategy into frontline operations?
Well, I think in anything, it needs to be aligned to the risks associated with the business, right? I mean, most businesses will have an idea of what risks they're exposed to. So I think, one of the things about what we're discussing today, which is kind of security and privacy, is that it's not really a technology problem. Mm-hmm. A lot of companies treat it as a technology problem, right? They'll have a look, well, we've got the right firewalls, or we've got the right endpoint protection, and these are valid things to have. Mm-hmm. But what about the softer side of things? What about the policies? What about the training of your staff? All that kind of stuff.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So to be able to, I think, at a high level, have your business strategies and the risks associated with your business, you have to include an element of both security and privacy to that risk enterprise strategy, if you have it.
Mm-hmm. So with that being said, if you're a visionary CEO and you don't have anybody to write those policies, if you don't have anybody who can monetize those great ideas of yours, right? So you go to urgio.ca or visit them or send them an email at info@urgio.ca. Urgio has worked with a multitude of companies from SaaS, CPG, mining, transportation, startups, all the way up to multinational corporations. So if you're a VC of a company that has one of those visionary CEOs at the helm of one, just give them a shout and then they'll help you out. Today, we have Keith Deighton. He's been in the information technology area for more than 25 years. In cybersecurity for 10, he's worked for big corporations like TELUS, IBM, Hitachi. He's owned and operated his own company and now works for Kobalt. Thank you very much for being on the show, Keith. Like always, a pleasure.
My absolute pleasure.
What is the title of the show? What do you want to put in the middle of the show? I think it's amazing.
I would like to call the show Protecting Your Crown Jewels in a Scottish accent.
That's right.
I know you'd appreciate that rolling of the R.
I would. So Keith, tell us about you. Tell us about your story. Sure. If you haven't picked up on his accent yet, so he is Scottish. So tell us, where does it begin? How does it go? And take us through your journey.
Well, I was born in Edinburgh in Scotland and was brought up with a very close family. We're still very close. In fact, my mother still lives in the house I was born in, which is fantastic, going home to those kind of roots, right? Mm-hmm. And my path kind of started from a technology perspective, actually with my brother. My brother was 34 years before he retired at Hewlett-Packard. And he was 15 years older than me, so I kind of looked up to him, my big brother. And so we were actually, I kind of said, I'd like to actually get into technology like my brother, right? Mm-hmm. So I went and did my first degree was in telecommunications and electronic engineering. Then I did my master's in business administration. And since then, I've taken multiple management courses on the management of portfolios, which is really about portfolio management, but in the sense not of money, which a lot of portfolio management disciplines are. It was more about project and program methodology. And then after that, I started taking courses on cybersecurity and cyber resilience. And I've recently just got my CISSP, which is a Certified Information Systems Security Professional. So that's kind of my background. I mean, you mentioned the companies I've worked for with IBM and TELUS, and I was involved with as a strategic alliance manager for or director, I should say, for Hitachi. And now I'm doing the same thing for Kobalt. So we're trying to make security better, as you can see the sign there, and protecting those crown jewels.
So what is a crown jewel? So people are, I mean, I know what my crown jewels are. So what do you, those are my kids, my crown jewels are my wife and my kids. Take your mind out of the gutters, whoever's listening there. So what are, I think, because you, in the pre-show, you mentioned something really good. So what do you consider crown jewels?
Yeah, well, the crown jewels are different to every organization. So it may very well be something as simple as your client list. Like, what would happen if your client list got into the wrong hands, or the pricing information, or any intellectual property that you've got? Or if you're handling credit card information, what would be the impact on your organization should that credit card information go missing all of a sudden? Or get into the wrong hands? If you've got healthcare related information about people that's very personal, what happens if they get into the wrong hands? So the crown jewels, and any CEO should really ask themselves, what are crown jewels? Because they're going to be different for every organization, right? And depending on the stage of your business, it may be that you're at a stage of your business where you've had a fair amount of growth, and you're now maybe a target for an acquisition or a merger, and in order to kind of grow your business, but your crown jewels can change over time.
That is so true. Maturity. I say this all the time. What was true yesterday might not be true today, and might not hold true tomorrow. And so that is always the constant, like, ignite curiosity. Oh, am I in the right place? Am I doing the right things?
Yes.
The status quo is a big thing. So just because you were a mom and pop, I should say mom and pop shop. That's so derogatory when I think about it. When you're a small
mom and pop.
That's right. When you're a 1 person, 2 person, 3 person show, and you're using certain systems, and what do really people care? But as you grow, then the value that you have to protect goes from a mini little kind of emerald to a big ass diamond to, I don't know what's bigger than a diamond, but anyways. So the evolution, understanding. So that's the first lesson from Keith today, is to say, make sure that what you did yesterday doesn't necessarily mean that you're not exposed to risk as of today or tomorrow.
Yeah. That's and as your customer list grows, you'll find that you'll become part of their supply chain. So understanding that you're part of their supply chain means that they care about whether you look after your crown jewels or not, because they're actually belonging to them in some cases, right?
That's true. So, what's the example that you gave me? I think we were talking 2 weeks ago or something like that, and you said they went through the ventilation system.
Oh yeah,
the HVAC. So I think that is an amazing story to tell.
Yeah, that was Target, and they were, believe it or not, Target. Target, the grocery, food grocery retail store. They had they lost 41 million credit card accounts. 41 million. So,
is this public knowledge?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's been out. I think it was a long time ago. It was 7 years ago, maybe something. 2013 or 14 or something. Like that. So this was a while back. It's very well documented, but it was, what was peculiar about that, as we had mentioned, was the way that the hackers got in. The way that the hackers got in was actually a back door, literally a back door, that was actually in the HVAC system.
Mm-hmm.
So their HVAC provider.
Sorry for interrupting. Heat, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. Yeah.
For those are not initiated.
Yeah.
So, quite a simple building management system, but they had a modem that was connected to it so that all the suppliers of the HVAC system could go in and see how it was behaving remotely. Mm-hmm. And the hackers managed to get in through that route. And it just so happens that the building management system was on exactly the same network segment as the PCI data, your personal credit information data, right? So 41 million customer payment accounts got stolen, and it cost them $18.5 million in a settlement, in a multi-state settlement. And obviously heads rolled because of that.
You think?
So one of the things that happened out of that, though, it began companies to have a look very closely at their supply chain. And that's why we go back to that supply chain thing, because you may say, well, I'm just a small company. Who's going to target me? Well, they might not be targeting you. They might be targeting your supply chain, your upward supply chain.
Your customer,
right? Yeah. So being able to protect your crown jewels and protect your clients' crown jewels becomes even more critical at that point, right? So what this spawned, though, was a whole new look at supply chain and third-party attestation. So now one of the things we're getting involved with lots is we've got lots of clients that say, hey, we've got 100 customers and we probably get about, when we're trying to add some more and we've got the sales cycle going, they're asking us, can you fill in our security questionnaire? And in a lot of cases, that might be 100 questions, or it might be 600 questions, or it might be an online form, or whatever it is. But in order for them to actually grow their business, they have to actually be ticking in boxes to say, yes, we do have logging and monitoring. Yes, we do have a security awareness campaign. Yes, we do have an incident response plan. And so that list is endless, right? And so depending on the complexity of your supply chain, you're likely at some stage to get given one of these questionnaires. And what do you do with it? Well, you toss it to the department who they normally toss it to, which is IT. But there's a whole bunch of questions in there that are not so associated with IT. There's a whole bunch of questions about
risk management 101.
Risk management, yeah. So it's one thing that I would like for everybody to get out of this is that security and privacy is not an IT problem.
It's like HR. HR is not an HR problem. It's a leadership and management issue. So same thing with security and privacy. It's not the system that do security. It's the people that set the expectation and doing a risk matrix for your corporation and your business continuity. I think that, and a lot of young companies don't do that. They don't assess risk. And it's as easy as a 3x3. What's the likelihood and what's the severity, right? And then you kind of go through, what do I do? Who am I playing with? I mean, with today's day and age, I mean, you look at all the hackings and stuff like that, doesn't take long to get to point A to point B. And just your personnel's information, your team members, their address, they could be geo-targeted. And I mean, we're not painting a doom and gloom picture here, far from that.
No, and you know, sorry to interrupt you, but it's something that we're trying to move away from as well. There's so much negativity out there and fear about security. The reality is it should be table stakes. Right? You should there's certain things that you should have to protect your crown jewels and your clients' crown jewels without looking at this through the lens of fear.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Look at it as I'm protecting my business because I'm protecting my brand, I'm protecting my reputation, but looking at it through the lens of just that, and not saying, hey, if I actually become more secure, more mature in my security, there's a chance of me winning more business.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when my supply chain comes to me and says, hey, do you have these things? Oh, yeah. Okay, well, here's that order.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's actually typical of kind of that kind of process. And the other thing to bear in mind is that to your point, this starts at the board.
Yeah.
It starts at the board level. There has to be ownership of, and that risk management plan and that security governance model at the board. And so board members should be asking, what are we doing about this? What are we doing about privacy? What are we doing about security? What elements are we actually doing to protect ourselves? Because there's huge stats out there that can drive fear.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
but rather than driving fear, let's drive. How can we spin this around and pivot on it to say, let's actually look at this from a growth perspective, and how can we do this to grow our business?
It's about facilitation, right? So there's so many lessons in here and analogies. Why do you put a lock on your front door? Why do you have a front door? Well, because you don't want everybody driving in the street seeing you walk from the dining room to the washroom in your flip-flops and your ugly t-shirt. I mean, and then you put a lock on your door because you say, okay, well, I know that nobody's going to attack me, but I just don't want anybody coming into my house when I'm not aware of it. And so it's not like I always think of cartoons like click, 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 like 16 different locks on the door. That's not that at all. The other component is, for those who don't know risk management very well, let me educate you a little bit. There's a term called ALARP, and that acronym stands for as low as reasonably possible. And so what is your risk tolerance? If you're going out there and you want to, and your risk tolerance for market is a little bit higher. If you want to get into a different industry, you're going to risk a little bit more. There's certain aspects of your business that you don't necessarily want to risk. And that is a reputational risk, that just like Target saying, hey, you know what? This company lost all their data. Well, am I going to want to do business with a company that lost all their data? You're an irresponsible parent. You left your kid at the daycare, or you left your dog in the car. But that's
the thing. We're still talking about this 7 or 8 years on, right?
It's crazy,
and that's how long the memory is. And there's a whole bunch of other ones as well. I mean, there's been breaches at Sony that were well documented, MGM, Maria.
Equifax. What was that dating app? Oh, what was it called?
That was Ashley Madison. Yeah, I mean, Ashley Madison was huge. But they set themselves up as the target. They actually said, no, we don't need to worry about your data. We know it, right? As soon as a hacker hears that, their hackers are up and they're wanting. And you know what happened with that story is they actually got in, and then they informed Ashley Madison, hey, we've got in, and you should actually pay us a ransom, right?
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, we'll release this data. And they said, go ahead. They didn't believe them.
And then lo and behold.
So now all of a sudden, all these adulterers and adulteresses that are out in Ashley Madison's out there. And it's sad. It's sad.
And the business got exposed for what it was, where they had false advertising, luring in men for where there was no. So there was actually, they had bots in the background that were actually automated, and they had people in the background that were automating things, or were had press 5 and it'll give you the same thing, the same message, right? So it's certainly one element that was very well documented as well. But one of the things that kind of struck me when I was listening to all of the stuff about breaches for those kind of things is, how long were the hackers actually in there? Right. And it's a question that you should ask your own organization. Have we already been breached? Yeah.
Did you know that the average time to actually identify a breach in 2020 was 207 days?
That's a whole year. That's like, what, 10 months? Yeah.
207 days. And so that average time to actually identify that you've been breached is a huge problem. And then the average life cycle of a breach was actually 280 days from identification to containment. So, and as I said, there's lots of stats out there for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. If you want to look at them, there's tons of data out there. Just do cybersecurity stats 2020, and you'll get it. But I said, as I said, what we need to do, I think nowadays, and what we're trying to do, and part of our mission statement in Kobalt is to spin that round and say, okay, how can we actually protect your organization, and how can we use it as a growth vector for you?
It's true,
right?
It's true. Right. I use this acronym from Tim Ferriss all the time: direction, elimination, automation, liberation. Right. So if you've got a good direction, then you can eliminate all the risk. And I shouldn't say eliminate, but you can eliminate a lot of risk.
You'll never eliminate all the risk.
Yeah, but exactly. Then what you do is you create some automations, and so that permits you to liberate, to grow your business. And the same acronym fits for privacy and security. Like Keith mentioned before, the crown jewels can be very different for different people at different levels of maturity. The decision needs to be made at top is, what's the level of risk that we want to take? And do we have the money to do it? Right? Because let's face it, security is
appetite. Yeah,
exactly. Security is often the last thing on the budget. And so they go, oh, we don't need that. That's expensive. Why should we need this? Why would we do this? This is the same people who've never lived through an incident or an emergency. I've worked in emergency response and crisis management for a long time. And you could see the CEOs that have had an experience. They go, hold on a second. Business continuity, top of the list. Contingency planning, top of the list.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Pandemic planning, top of the list. So you look at all the companies, and I'll put a shout. Shell had, when I was back at Shell back in 2004, 5, we did pandemic planning back then. Business continuity. What happens if this? That was like way back then. So just because on the risk matrix, just because the probability is low, if the impact or severity is high, then follow the risk management matrix philosophy, and then put your organization in there so that you know what to put forth. And regardless if it's security, it shouldn't go at the back end just because it's IT security, right?
And it's not IT; it's a business problem.
Exactly.
Right? That's the biggest thing. And a lot of customers that we have, they come to us and say, listen, I've got a security problem, but I really don't know where to start. What's the starting point? And
great lesson.
And so generally, the starting point's typically a gap assessment, right? Or baseline assessment. And there's lots of organizations out there that do it, and some organizations will do it for free, only because they've got something coming afterwards, right? And what we in Kobalt, what we've done is we've packaged it up in something that's actionable for the customer, right? So what you were talking earlier on, what was it? Encourage action, right? And from Urgio, that was your description of Urgio. And we're on the same boat. We have this bias towards action because there are lots of people out there that tout themselves as advisors, security advisors, virtual CISO services. But what they don't do, and no disrespect to my community, I love my community, but in a lot of cases, what they don't do is say, hey, you're missing gaps in here, and here, and so you got to go and fill them. Then they leave it back on your plate. What we do is we'll do that piece, but then we'll say, hey, you've got gaps here, and here. And here's our solution to that.
Because there's a lot of things now with SaaSes that you can press. Do you want communications encrypted? There's a lot of stuff that we as users can do in our system, SSL, what's it called?
MFA,
Yeah,
the
and
multi-factor authentication. Yeah, I mean,
correct.
if there was two lessons of kind of easy hits to take away with, and I know we're not anywhere near the end, and we'll maybe get to it again at near the end, but certainly MFA is one of these things.
Mm-hmm.
To turn on multi-factor authentication, and just to explain what that is for a second. Most of us log into these SaaS systems and we use a username and password. And that's really something that you know, but it's something that someone else can know as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they can find it out from all these vast breaches that have happened. And I'll talk later on about a website that you can go to actually see if you have been breached.
Oh, sweet.
Right? So, and that's a really useful tool just for you to ascertain, well, who have I been speaking to who, where my information has appeared on a breach for them?
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of cases, the stuff that's on that particular website that I'll share with you, it's old information, right?
Mm.
But in a lot of cases, people don't update the password.
It's true.
Right? So because that information is somewhere else in the dark web, and people are harvesting these passwords, it means what you know is also known by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So multi-factor authentication adds a layer or two. And the second layer is really about something that you have. And it might be a token. You've probably logged into some systems where it will send you a text,
Mm-hmm.
right? It'll only send you a text to that one particular number. It won't go anywhere else. So you might use a Google Authenticator or a Microsoft Authenticator tool. And so that way it comes up with a little token ID that you can plug in and get access to the system. Then it validates that you are actually who you say you are. Mm-hmm. So that's multi-factor authentication. You plug in your password and you put in a code. Mm-hmm. I would thoroughly recommend to make sure to talk to any CEO that with any of the SaaS systems that they're using for your HR, for your accounting, typical questions you need to ask is, can I set up multi-factor authentication with these accounts? A, yes or no. And what is your backup strategy? Because now they're in your supply chain.
That's right.
You should be asking them that list of questions, right?
So, the knee bone's connected to the hip bone. The hip bone's connected to the. So for SaaS, we get caught up in acronyms. A software as a service provider. Okay, so a SaaS is Keith, talk about. I've got a whole bunch of other questions. So, what's the difference between? I'll go in order. What's the difference between the web and the dark web? Because he's just like which like what's all I can think of is kind of the layers, right? You say the dark web, and now I can only see like a level where there's demons and stuff like that. That's the visual that I have of that in Greek mythology, right? And it's the kind of. So what's the difference between what we know as the World Wide Web and the dark web?
It's Dante's Inferno. No, so actually, I mean, quite simply put, the web is everything that we see that's in the public domain, or what we call open source. Okay. It's open to everybody, and so that's your typical Google search, Bing search, all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
The dark web is a darker place. Now, you still do your searching on it.
I'm just going to put sound effects behind.
You still do your searching on it using a browser known as Tor, or otherwise known as the Onion Router. So basically what you can search for is remember we were talking earlier on about Target and how 41 million credit cards got stolen. Well, where do the credit cards go?
Yeah, what do they do with that?
The credit cards go into the dark web and they sell them for $10 a pop. So your information, your credit card's information is now on the dark web for anybody to buy. So that's why the delay between actually a breach understand that a breach has happened and its containment and all that, and the announcement. Because, as soon as it's announced for like Target losing 41 million customer credit cards, they need to know pretty soon, because that information has probably been on the web for months.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of deep web. It's where you find all sorts of nefarious stuff, and you can go on the dark web and you can buy hacker tools. You can buy automation tools to hack, botnets and so that command and control systems. So you can buy a piece of software and you can put it surreptitiously onto someone's PC, and basically you can control it remotely. So you can buy all these tools online, and the tools are cheap. The tools might cost you 0.00001 of a Bitcoin, right? And typically everything's sold in Bitcoin now. But that's what they'll take credit card too. So anyway,
I'll take your credit card, please. Thank you.
But that's the thing, and it's actually a service, a really useful service as well, because as an organization, you really want to know, are any of my executives' email addresses, social insurance numbers, personal health information, is any of that in the dark web? So there are services and tools out there that will allow you to actually search the dark web and do, there's some index tools, a bit like Google will index the open source. Mm-hmm. There are some tools out there that can
So how did the authorities peek in? So how did I'm assuming the authorities know about this dark web and they go diving in there and sending technical SWAT teams, if you want to call it that, in there to go, search and destroy all of these guys? Or is it just catch me if you can kind of?
Yeah, well, it is catch me if you can in some ways, but remember as well that a lot of the stuff on the dark web is done on reputation, which is why we get the term white hat, grey hat, and black hat hackers.
Oh, I did not know that.
Right.
So there's 3 types of hackers: a white hacker, a gray hacker, and a black hatter.
Yeah,
black
and
hacker.
Hacker. Yeah, so essentially a white hacker are the people that we will actually bring into your organization and tell you where you're actually vulnerable.
Okay.
And then once you've identified the vulnerabilities, then
you plug them up.
What hacker typically does is they'll identify the vulnerabilities. They'll then actually exploit those vulnerabilities, and
sell them.
Yeah, there's tons of tools out there that will do this, right? So we can send in people with the right appropriate experience and tools, certified ethical hackers,
mm-hmm.
are otherwise known, aka white hat hackers.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. There are also grey hat hackers out there, and these are the kind of guys that want to be nice, but they've got a motive, right? And so what they'll do is they'll typically tell an organization that, we've actually done some scanning and some testing, and we've found these areas of weakness, and we've now got access to your database, but we suggest that you shut it down, and we'll give you X amount of days to shut it down or whatever it is. But then after that, they just use the data to go and put it on the dark web, and sell it to anybody who's interested. At that point, your data's gone.
Damn.
Right? So it's still kind of grey hat. Black hat, they won't tell you about the fact that they've been in your network for 6 months, right? They've been in your systems for 6 months, and they'll tend to do a good cleanup job after themselves to hide logs that might have proved that they've been there. But they will sit there on your network and slowly extract intellectual property. That beautiful design that you had for the next widget that's going to make you $1 billion, and they're slowly extracting all the information. And they do it slowly, so it's not like a one big lump.
Yeah. It's like a penny off of $1 million, right?
Yeah, and typically when there's a breach in a system, you'll actually have a PC and it's got a command and control system on it, or It's got a rootkit on it, and that particular hacker is able to do anything on that system. The first thing he does is set up a little VPN tunnel, so you can't actually see what's going through the firewall and exiting your network. So they slowly exfiltrate all the data that they want, sell it on the dark web, come back, clean up the fact that they've been there, and you never know that the data's actually gone and left and gone to the dark web.
So all I can see is a ninja living underneath my kitchen table, my dining room table, holding on like the ninjas do, like their feet and their hands up. And then when we're out of the house, run out, go in the kids' piggy bank, take a few dollars, go in my account, take a few dollars here, take the whole thing, go, where the hell are my keys? I thought I left change here. You blame the sock monster, but ultimately it's one of those black hatters that's living underneath. But we're so loosey-goosey, including myself, with my passwords. I'm so focused on getting stuff done that I forget, right? And I go, oh, it's so easier to do this. So tell us, I think that the one key component, the passwords, keeping it fresh, keeping it distinct, right? Same thing with special operations. When I was in the Army, you never took the same route. You took a different approach, right? There's keeping it fresh. So what's your suggestion for passwords?
Use a password manager.
Okay. Number one, password manager.
Yeah, number one, password manager. At the very least, have a policy within your organization that you need to have a password that's a specific length, because they're harder to actually figure out for if they've got what I think called hash tables, because normally passwords are encrypted, right? And so it makes it a lot more difficult. But what's actually happening is someone will have already done the work to rehash the passwords out of a hash table and put it into regular words, right?
Gotcha.
But it makes that step more difficult, assuming that the company who's actually got the passwords in the first place have got proper encryption on them, right?
Yeah. So give me a couple.
Just to keep answering that question, the answer is have a policy for one, from a corporate perspective, but also use a password manager, because what password manager does is you only have to remember one password. So I don't know how many passwords you've got, but I've probably got over 100 passwords.
I think so, yeah.
And so the thing is with a password manager, what you do is you learn that one password. And then it says, I'm now want to connect to such and such. And what it does is it creates a huge or long password that's encrypted that you would never remember.
Oh, I know. I use it all the time. So give us a shout out. Which password managers do you like best?
LastPass and 1Password are probably the best ones that are out there. So and they're relatively inexpensive. I think 1Password is like $4 a month. But it saves a lot of time in logging onto systems, for one, and remembering passwords, for two, and leaving yourself open and vulnerable, for three.
Agreed. And sharing information as well with the softs out there, sharing the password. Oh, give me the password because I'm on my end, right? Zoom. My wife goes, what's my password for? I said, no, I'll register you. So, and then when creating that 1Password, what's your suggestion?
Definitely use uppercase, lowercase, number, special characters. One of the things that's actually really, really important is, rather than actually a password, because passwords themselves with numbers on the end can be easily hacked. There's methods called rainbow tables and other methodologies that hackers use for unraveling encrypted passwords that are simple to do.
Yeah, because a lot of people replaces E's with 3s and L's with 1s.
Yeah, but there's a better way to do it, right? Is a passphrase.
Ooh.
Think of a passphrase that you know and only you know.
I like bananas.
So I like bananas, but I like bananas on a Saturday, but never on a Sunday.
Okay.
Right? And you use the first letter for each one.
So I like bananas on a Sunday, not Saturday,
not a Sunday, whatever. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you can have it longer than that, but you can also replace on with 0 and S with 5.
Gotcha.
And you can put a special character at the beginning or the end, right? As long as the website that you're logging into can do that. So that's if you don't want to actually use 1Password or LastPass, which are the two kind of methodologies. So kind of, one of the things that's quite interesting, that maybe your podcast listeners don't know about, is that 95% of all breaches are actually human error.
Oh,
right?
Carry on.
So I think it's an important point, because the biggest attack surface that a hacker has are your staff. So what do you do to protect your staff? Oh, yes, you can have proper password policies. You can endorse, one of these password managers across your organization to make it easier for people. You can also use identity and access management solutions, so that it'll be a level of verification that only Martin can go to this system and this system. You can't go to this system, this system, this system, because even if you're hacked for whatever reason, then there's limited kind of destinations that you can go. So making sure from a human perspective that you've covered yourself adequately, and that's a tough job. It's a tough job because humans are humans, right? Social engineering is the easiest way to get past a human, right? And we endorse, and we've got our own kind of security awareness, which is little video segments that you can take so that you can spot a phishing attack or a social media engineering attack or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And text attacks, WhatsApp attacks. There's all sorts of attacks that can be hit to a human when they click on it. All of a sudden, their phone's vulnerable, their PC's vulnerable, whatever it is. So being able to understand 95% of all cybersecurity breaches are caused by humans is a really important thing to keep in mind in your risk profile. So how do you mitigate that? Right.
Here's the example of what Keith is mentioning. Was it not just last week? I got an email from my executive assistant saying, here's the link to the new presentation. And if I had not noticed that it came from her personal email and not her work email, I would have clicked on it. And because she writes short, the AI behind it was amazing. She said, "Hi, Martin, here's the link to the new, thank you." Wrote in the exact same format that she does. And I was just about to say, I went to click on it and I go, presentation, what presentation? And if my mind would have been anywhere else, I would have pressed that link button, and I am sure that I would have opened Pandora's box, that's for sure.
Well, and so that's a typical kind of email compromise situation, right? And business email compromise is really one of the, otherwise known as CEO impersonation, right? The CEO, and it's actually got your actual, it's actually from your email, right? And there are ways around that, and there's easy things you can do from a technology perspective to minimize it. But it's a rapidly growing, kind of technical and social engineering attack that's designed to mimic your C-suite, right? So, but there's different levels that you need to be aware of, right? And so there's phishing, there's spear phishing, there's whaling, which is really that kind of email compromise from an executive, right? And phishing, let's talk about phishing for a second, right? So we all get phishing emails all the time, right? And because we have our security awareness training, it's only as good and effective when you've actually gone in and tested them afterwards. Did they understand the security awareness training? did they actually think about looking at the legitimate nature of the email that they were sent? Was it from someone that they really knew and trusted before they clicked on it? And if they were unsure in any way, shape, or form, pick up the phone and talk to them.
Oh my goodness. Pick up the phone, period.
Yeah.
Let's talk
Millennials
about...
don't like picking up the phone. That's the thing. You know,
then they send you a text that is like, oh my goodness gracious.
That's funny. My daughter, like, she says, I always know when it's you when my ringer says you've got a phone message, because you're the only one that leaves a message.
I was texting my daughter and I called her because my fat little fingers don't go that fast. And I called her and she doesn't answer. She goes, what do you want by text? I said, I want to talk to you. And she's like, what's wrong with text? I was like, because I want to talk to you. I can't text. Like, I know you're there. You're texting me. Just answer the goddamn phone.
Yeah. And the danger of that is the fact that there's another medium there of being able to get access to you via your text or whatever.
Oh,
right? There's SMS hijacking, right?
It happened to us.
Let's go back. Did you?
Well, hold on. Let me park this for a sec, because I think there's a key lesson to be learned here about emails that I think is worthwhile. If you create the right behaviors within the business, right? A lot of people have their emails open up on the side and they do work and they think they can multitask, but it's biologically impossible to multitask. It's task switching. So when you keep your emails up and running, you want to respond quick and you don't think about it. I practice a 2-day email session. So I have 45 minutes in the morning and then about 30 minutes in the evening at the end of my day where I do my emails. Other than that, it's closed. It's closed. It is turned off. It doesn't bother me, so that when the emails come in, I am focused on reading the email properly, because most people don't read their emails properly, actioning the email, and then deleting the goddamn thing. All right? So get it out, get it out, get it out, get it out. So if you have the proper business etiquette, it also suffices. By doing it well, minimizes your risks, also creates less exposure, and therefore reduces the overall need that you have for a Band-Aid protection umbrella, where you have to have, 3, 5, 6 levels of security. If the human being is safe of nature and having the right behaviors, then a small system or a reasonable system is more than efficient. Sorry, email etiquette is, I get on my soapbox.
Yeah, no, I get it. Let me just share with you a couple of stories, because we do phishing exercises to test if our customers have actually understood the security awareness program that we've given them. Right? So give them the security awareness program, and then a couple of months later test them. And so we'll send emails. And one of the typical ones that we've been sending out recently is we've been actually sending an email, and it's been constructed in this kind of fashion. We can find out where your organization's building is. We find out who the landlord is of that building, which is very easy to do. Then create a little logo with their logo, or find an email that's come from them from somewhere, and just copy and paste their look and feel. And then say, hey, next time you come back in the office, these are the new COVID guidelines. Please click here. 98% of people will click on that.
Of course.
That's how simple it is. That's how simple it is to create a huge problem for an organization. Now that we're all spread out, how do you do and how do you handle it now, right? So that's kind of that's what you call phishing in its generic sense, because phishing is really just, it goes out to everybody, right? Yeah,
you put your line in the water.
There's spears phishing as well. You might want to actually get more information about your executive assistant, right? So you'll target her personal email address and business or whatever it is, target her, and then do that email business email compromise. The other thing is what's called whaling. So it's like phishing is to everybody, spear phishing is to target someone, and whaling is where you've actually got, you're actually targeting the executives. Right? And so you get a letter, you get an email from the CEO to the CFO say, hey, you need to send $25,000 to this company. Can you get it done today? Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've heard
I actually came from Martin at Argio, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, my daughter got texts from me and she was replying. And then I got a text and she said, no way. Like she called me and she says, no way, Dad. I was like, no way, what? What are you talking about? It's like, no way. Why would I give you money? I was like, what are you talking about? And she took a screenshot of this and it came under my name and I couldn't see it from my side. And she's like, my dad usually gives me money. Why should he want money?
Yeah, something's wrong with this picture.
I know. So I can think of doing it the wrong way. So maybe the AI should have flipped it around and been her. And I was like, okay, sure. I'll give you an extra $200 again. So, but that's taking the time. So as if we, Keith and I are big advocate of time. You only have 24 hours in a day. And so Keith and I understand that principle. So when you take the time to do things well, when you take the time to look at your risks, when you take the time at ensuring that you're doing a good risk management and you identify which areas that you want to protect and your crown jewels that we haven't said in a while, what are your crown jewels? And you attach the right behaviors with the right systems, then it's risk is like HR. Not risk. Security becomes like HR. It's everything that you do. It's no different than safety.
It's everybody's responsibility.
Exactly.
That's the thing, right? And that's a big problem because as we discussed earlier, a lot of companies seem to think it's a technology problem, and it's not. And it belongs in the IT department. It's not. It's a risk management business problem, that should be from top down. I mean, I think one of the things that we're kind of conscious of just now is the fact that we've got a whole bunch of IoT devices out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we're talking about.
IoT. What is IoT for
listeners? It's basically an Internet of Things, right? So we connect everything to the internet now. Our light bulbs, our Alexas, and doorbells, whatever it is, right? Everything's connected. And it's these are all potential access points to your data, right? So being able to keep your eye on making sure that all your devices are updated, all your personal devices are updated. Make sure you've got backup strategies for all of your personal stuff. Never mind, I know this is a business discussion, but it actually comes down to personal hygiene as well from a technology perspective, right? And so being able to make sure that you've covered all of that and you understand where your risks are really important, really important. And we discussed earlier on about that starting point, right? Starting point is do a gap assessment, have a clear understanding of your technical controls. They're still important, right? Your administrative controls, we talked about that as well, right? About the fact that you may need policies and procedures that are not in place and no sharing of accounts and things like that. So have the proper policies, but make sure they're enforced, right? A lot of people will build policies and put them on a shelf and never look at them, right? They have to be enforced. So technical controls, administrative controls, and lastly, physical control. You talked earlier on about, why do you put a lock on the door? Well, and it brings up a nice concept for executives to try and understand, and it's very easy because I love the analogy, and it's a continuation of the analogy. The idea is you've got a fence in your yard, you've got a lock on your door, you've got cameras outside, you've got a safe inside, and you keep your crown jewels in that safe.
True.
Right? And from a military perspective, you probably heard the term before, It's called defense in depth.
Yes.
Right.
Never heard that once or twice.
You might have heard that once or twice. But it's the same argument for cybersecurity and for privacy, right? Protect those crown jewels and have multiple layers of defense, that you can actually make sure that you're protecting what you need to protect.
I one of the things that is, and I'll go a little bit high level. I believe that the world is full of comfort now, and people feel so very comfortable about anything and everything, right? I always tell my kids, I think about the image of putting your hand through the computer. And as you put your hand in any movies, and then you kind of put your head through it and go, oh, wow, there's an inner world behind there. So people just, exactly. So you go through the matrix, but the computer itself is that gateway to the entire world, which is absolutely fabulous, but it's also somewhat risky. And I didn't say the word dangerous. You have to assess. I love jumping out of planes. Some people go, are you fucking crazy? Some people are do that. Some people, are afraid to touch a chainsaw because they don't know how to operate it. So therefore, they don't cut down trees. And I use the chainsaw analogy because you can hurt yourself more if you don't know how to use it. So knowledge is not power. Knowledge is the gateway to power, because acting on knowledge is power. That's the key thing. So understand the greater scheme of things in saying that, okay, it is risky, but there's opportunity behind it. So don't close yourself in. Don't lock yourself in. You've walked down the street before on the sidewalk and somebody's bumped you in the shoulder. I mean, you're not going to bubble wrap yourself and stay inside with that. Well, before COVID. So, so you drive a car every day. People don't realize that dying from car accident is the number one death around the world. So, but people drive cars every day. And so there is risk associated with that. So don't take our conversation here as a doom and gloom of everything. There's opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I wanted to couch that earlier on, is don't look at this through that lens of fear, right? And I know we've talked about what looks like fearful statistics during this conversation, but don't look at your business through the lens of fear. Look at, how can this enable me to grow my business, right?
And the opposite of that is ensuring that you're wearing your seatbelt. And security and cybersecurity is your seatbelt. It's your airbags. It's like in case of. So when you buy a car, it's kind of comes with the car. What we're saying today is, when we started driving, airbags were optionals, right? Do you want a car? Do you want to play extra?
Around.
And so all these security and safety measures are now in the car. We're not there yet in the cyber world. So you have to buy that seatbelt. You have to buy the airbag, but it's a good investment for your business, because now you know that you can drive safely down the path at the acceptable level of speed, and gives you that ability to drive your business with velocity.
Yeah, velocity. We love velocity. Pragmatism as well, right? I mean, try and find a partner that actually can help you and with practical solutions as well. That's the thing, right? And one of the things I actually had a meeting, and we had a meeting internally just the other day, and our director of SOC operations said, "Does anybody know where cyber comes from?" Apparently, cyber means it's some Latin for sailing or something. I haven't actually looked at it, but he says it's Latin for sailing, and the idea is that we're actually your guide. So it's actually interesting thinking that a lot of people thought that cyber came from cybernauts, whatever it was, but cyber actually comes from Latin to say your guide, right? So it's guiding security, right? And so it's something to bear in mind as well, because when you're looking at starting this process, if you haven't started it already, about understanding your security posture, right? As I said, start with a gap assessment, do a risk register, have a look at the probability of something happening in your organization and the impact your organization should it happen. So if the impact is high and the probability is high, chances are you should probably do something about it, right?
When you look at the matrix and the box is red, do something, right?
And the box is red. You got it. You got it.
If I was to take something out of all of this conversation, Keith, is the fact that everything's interconnected. And what I mean by that is, like you've mentioned before, you're a vendor or you're somebody else's vendor. And so you've always got a boss. And so therefore, if you're connected to the elbow and the elbow is connected to the shoulder and shoulder is connected to the neck bone, means that maybe you're good. Maybe your vendor is good, but maybe your client is not good.
Right.
So take a good look at all of that put together. And I think that's going to give you a good understanding of where you should go in regards to security and protecting your crown jewels. Keith, I always ask everybody, I don't say leaders or readers. I say leaders or learners. I'm dyslexic. Some people like to listen to podcasts, hopefully. Some people like to watch YouTube, hopefully. So if what is important for you, what piece of reference, it could be a book, it could be an author, it could be a podcast. What is your go-to reference to expanding, not cybersecurity, but for you to learn? And if it's attached to cybersecurity, fine. But what's the one thing that you are looking to learn? What resources are you using? Open-ended question.
Well, I mean, and it really depends on whether you're looking to be scared or not. Right? And that's what we're trying to avoid, because there's tons of information, tons of references, a Verizon breach report. There's IBM breach reports. There's every major security vendor has got some kind of, here's the state of the nation this year, and here's what you should be protecting, right? So there's tons of that information. But practical services, I mean, I think the cybersecurity services in Canada, actually, there's some free stuff that they can give you. So that there's certainly some reference there. From a podcast perspective, I personally love, believe it or not, it's actually a vendor, but I love the Sophos Naked Security podcast. And it's very informal, but very informative. And they have a laugh along the way, but they're talking.
Sounds familiar.
Exactly. But they're talking about very important things and related to related to business people rather than actually being too technical, right? And so I actually do love that broadcast. But there are tons of stuff out there. As I said, Verizon, CrowdStrike, FireEye, they all have reports that you can look at summaries of, what should I do? Where should I start?
Thank you.
And this, I think there's probably one thing that we really haven't touched on much, which is important to Canadian listeners. Well, it's actually important for listeners all over the world, but especially for Canadian listeners just now. So I don't know if you're familiar with, from a privacy perspective, on GDPR.
So what does it stand for?
It's the General Data Protection Regulation, which is in the EU, right? So it was the tightest data protection regulation that's out there. It was out there for a while. It's been out there for a while now. And basically, if you're collecting people's information in any way, shape, or form, but it's personally identifiable information, and you have a breach, then the GDPR regulations can fine you up to 4% of your annual revenue. Globally. Ouch. Okay, so I've got your attention now.
And the crowd quiets down. Okay, now this is serious. Again, not doom and gloom. Keith, thank you very much. Where do people get a hold of you?
Kobalt, my email address is keith.deighton, Deighton. You see it spelled there, at kobalt.io. And talking about references, we have blogs, we have free gap assessments you can actually do on our website. There's a whole bunch. And there's also webinars that we've had in the past. We had one recently. Just to make this more pertinent for Canadians, just that last comment about GDPR, there's a new bill coming out in Canada called Bill C11, which is actually it's called the CPPA, which is the equivalent for GDPR, but for Canadian companies.
Okay.
And so, and this is actually more onerous than GDPR. It's 5% of your annual revenue that you can get as a penalty if you have a breach of your privately identifiable information. So, for your Canadian listeners, it's coming here to Canada. I think a lot of us thought that it wouldn't come to Canada and we would only have to worry about regulations, specifically regulations in part of the US and in Europe. But anyway, we do have a webinar that's been recorded. And if anybody's interested, it's a Bill C11 webinar. You'll see it on a Kobalt.io site.
With that said, I need a scotch.
All right, I'll join you.
Keith, thank you very much for being on the show. It zoomed by. Keith, in the pre-show, I was like, I don't think we can fill, an hour. Like, look at this, right? So we're what now? An hour in now, a little bit less than an hour. So, and we could go on for ages and ages.
We could, yeah.
For the benefit of the listeners who have to go do something else, or if you're listening as you're doing something else, switch up, listen to another one. But we got work to do here. So with that being said, thank you very much, Keith. My name is Martin Hunter. I am the host of What CEOs Talk About show, where we translate strategy into frontline operate. Oh, my social media team will kill me. Please like, subscribe, click the bell. Whatever the young crowd says a days to increase social awareness on the program. So thank you very much, Keith. And everybody have a nice day. Thank you.
Right. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to What CEOs Talk About. Make sure to click subscribe to get notified about future episodes, or check us out at www.whatceostalkabout.com.